Welcome to Athletic Ambitions with me, Fiona Carter.
And me, Tom Barlow.
We are here to share the stories of our Cass and Friends athletes, aspiring Olympians and world champions. We will also interview elite athletes and professionals. They will be sharing their stories, the ups and downs and bumpy ride that their journey may have. We will learn how they persevere and deal with setbacks, train and compete at the highest level, and how their mindset helps with every step of the way. So if you want to hear about our upcoming athletes and learn from the best, this podcast is for you.
This is Athletic Ambitions, where every journey begins with a single step.
So, hi Ellie, thank you so much for coming on to the Cass and Friends podcast. It's absolutely lovely to see you again. I haven't seen you for a little while, but it's great to see your face today and to have a catch up. So Ellie was one of our Cass and Friends athletes. She's a sprinter and had a very, very successful sprinting career as a junior and up until university or throughout university. And we'll talk about that during the podcast. So yes, very much a Cass and Friends athlete who was so supportive of everything that we did and grateful for all the support. So it's lovely to be talking to you today.
Yes, and Juby, thank you so much for having me on.
It's a pleasure. I hope that everybody's going to learn a lot from Ellie's experience and career as an athlete. She's got such a bright potential and bright future ahead of her because she's using her degree that she did at Bath to help her with her career as well. So those athletes out there looking to progress a career in sport will learn a lot, I'm sure, from Ellie's experience. So we'll talk all about your career as well. But first of all, let's talk about running. Let's talk about where it started. How old were you? And tell us a little bit about your sporting career from a young age to up to about 15, 16.
Yeah, of course. So I think I started sprinting when I was probably 12 or 13. I never can really remember the exact time that I started. It was all a bit of a blur. So I played all sorts when I was younger: hockey, rugby, cricket. We're a very big sports family, so it's kind of just like try everything and see what you're good at. And that fortunately led me to sprinting. Found that was probably my best after a lot of trial and error in other sports. That was probably where I shone. So yeah, started at Gloucester Athletics Club around about 12, 13. Started with Gary and Justin coaching me, and it kind of just took off from there, really. It went from like doing my first trial session to 3, 4 sessions a week. Absolutely just adored it. There's something about sprinting, it being a sport that you do on your own, but there's such a massive team around you as well, which is so warming and so lovely. So yeah, started around 12, 13. Can't remember when I did my first national competition, maybe 14. It kind of all happened very quickly for me. And thrown in at the deep end a little bit going into my first national competition, 100 meters. Not really any idea what I was doing, just happy to be there. And then, yeah, did nationals every year, then onwards until 17, 18, and then went to university in Bath and started in their performance athletics group there as well. So yeah, a good 8 years of my life committed to sprinting, and thoroughly enjoyed those years.
Yeah, that's a long time, isn't it? 7, 8 years of those serious training sessions.
Yeah.
I can remember the first time I met you, I came to the track. It was in the middle of winter. It's absolutely freezing cold, and your mum was standing. Maybe your mum and dad were standing watching you.
Yeah.
I was like amazed that you didn't actually run that much. You just did a lot of work on the ground, on mats on the ground, and drills.
Yeah.
So all of those sessions on those cold winter nights. How do you think you managed that into when you were at school at quite a young age? What sort of drove you, do you think, to sort of keep going through those tough sessions?
I think honestly it was like a little bit of a sense of belonging to that team. I think when you're young and you're starting in secondary school and you're a bit all over the place, you don't know who your friends are, you don't know who you are or what you enjoy. And then you turn up at the track, everyone there, we all have this same goal. And yeah, just such a supportive environment was a big thing for me. It was like you could leave school behind and
Yeah,
just come to the track. You could take out your emotions. Like sprinting's quite a good one for if you're like an angry person. You can really just take it all out on the track.
yeah,
So it was definitely difficult to balance, and I think in all honesty, sprinting did actually take over from um, prioritizing my education. I will say that at some points I definitely did prioritize sprinting, and looking back, that I mean I don't regret it because I did get far in my sprinting career, but yeah, definitely my parents were probably right in I needed to be a bit better at managing my priorities. I probably should have listened to them. Um, but yeah, it's definitely difficult trying to manage, sport, school, all your emotions, everything that goes on in such a difficult period of your life. But I was surrounded, like I said, by such a great team and supportive coaches, and all the teachers at school were really supportive of me as well and what I wanted to do. So definitely think it's about who's around you.
yeah, yeah. I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. It's interesting, isn't it? Some families and parents really push the academics, and others are just
Yeah,
like, no, it doesn't really matter. Just enjoy what you're doing. And it's
yeah,
difficult to know how to play that one, because you've clearly done very, very well going to Bath University. It's a very prestigious university, and you've done brilliantly to go there. So I think from an outsider looking in, it looks like you've probably managed it quite well for me.
yeah.
Oh,
I mean, I think so. I don't really know. I think that yeah, again, like my parents were a massive driver for me. They just, drove me to excel in my sport, but they also kind of reined me in and said, you've got to have a backup. Every athlete has a backup. If this isn't for you, if this doesn't work out for you, you need to have something to fall back on. It's great that you're so driven to achieve such big things in your sport, but if it doesn't work out, like in my case, it didn't. And if I didn't have the backup, uh, God knows what I would be doing now.
yeah, yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, that is an absolutely fair comment, isn't it? People, sports athletes get injured. Or they decide they don't actually really love it as much as they did when they were in those teenage years.
Yeah.
You never know what's around the corner, so it's probably good to have a backup as well. What about the competitions? So did you love the competitions and the nationals and all the pressure of those, or were you a bit scared by them, a bit nervous with them, or how did you feel about the actual competing?
Yeah, I mean, anyone who knows me will know that I have always been a very, very anxious person. Like it's just in my nature. Even when I was like little girl, I was very anxious. So competitions were always a struggle for me. District level competitions, national level competitions, my body didn't know the difference between the two. It
Mm.
both would just set an outrageous amount of panic through my system. I don't know what it was exactly. I think it was I just put a lot of pressure on myself to achieve. And although I had the confidence in myself to know, like, for example, at your county, at your district competitions, I knew that I was good. I knew that I could probably win. But I think there was still a little bit of doubt of, okay, I'm putting all this pressure on myself, and what happens if I don't win? Like I'm setting these expectations, and then what if I don't meet them? So I think there was always that, oh, what if I'm not as good as people tell me I am or I think I am? So I definitely struggled. I really did struggle with competitions, and I think it's still something that I would struggle with now if I went back to athletics. I find that I think this is a bit of a universal experience actually, but sometimes even just watching it on TV makes me physically nervous because I can remember exactly how I used to feel when
Yeah.
I was on the line thinking all these thoughts. You can't even think about running at that time because you've just got so much going on in your head. So yeah, even watching it on TV now, just fills me with anxiety. So it's something that I never quite figured out how to beat. I'm sure a lot of people have in their time and they've kind of overcome that. Something that I never really figured out, but yeah, it was quite difficult for me. But I still really, really enjoyed it. You know, once that anxiety post-race kind of subsides and you're just left with the adrenaline and feelings of achievement, that was honestly it's my favorite feeling in the world.
Yeah. So you kind of have to get through that race, don't you, to get to the other side.
Exactly
And
that,
again, you're going with the team, you're going, with everybody that you've trained with, and they're all at the track with you cheering. But it's a real balance, because individual athletes put a lot of pressure on themselves, like perhaps you did, and then other people put pressure on athletes, and not necessarily meaning to do it, but they just might make a flippant comment like, oh my golly, I bet you're going to win, or I can't wait to see you, at school the next day because you can tell me that you got on the podium or something, and they're just being super supportive, and they're just trying to sort of, they just think that you're so good, and so they're obviously saying the right things that they think are the right things, but it's pressure from other people as well.
Yeah, exactly that. And like you say, most of the time they are just showing their support, but it's just things that I think you pick up on and you kind of collect until it's like a mountain of all these people that you feel that you need to impress. And yeah, it's like there's never any ill intention there. It's just something that happens.
Yeah. So can you remember which was your best race, favorite race? Not necessarily, the best race is not necessarily a performance, but it could just be a vibe or an atmosphere or an occasion. Can you remember which yours was?
I mean, I always loved English schools because there's just such an amazing team atmosphere, something that you don't really experience in any other competition. Obviously they have like the parade and you all travel up together, you stay in the hotel together. And that experience was it's so good. It's just like a glimpse into professional sport because you get treated like a professional athlete, and it was so lovely. And I've made so many friends throughout my whole athletics career, but specifically at English schools, getting to meet people from all over the country. And that was really, really lovely. And I think also any time that I got to run a relay ever, because again, that's just the time where the sport comes together. You know, you're always fighting for yourself and racing for yourself, and then all of a sudden you get to do that as a team, and it's just so nice. Especially when it starts to feel like a little bit lonely. I think when you go through the season, if you do indoors, it can be January to September is your season where all you're thinking about is yourself and racing for yourself. And it's nice to just have those team moments in there as well.
Yeah. So looking back at a younger Ellie, what would you say to her now in terms of her running career?
That's a tough one, actually. I think I would probably say, um, I'd probably say just run for yourself, compete against yourself. Actually, one of my old training partners, Ben, said this to me. He said that the only person he trains for is himself. The only person he's ever worried about competing against is himself. And that just shifted so many things for me because I was always thinking about other people. 10 days before a race, I'd be on power of 10. I'd be going, okay, who am I up against? What's their fastest time? What have they run recently? Standing on the line, I'd be thinking, who are these people next to me? What are my odds of winning? And all this stuff that just wasn't irrelevant. And I think him saying that just gave me such a different perspective. And although I don't race anymore, that would be something that I would take in to my race mindset. And I think, yeah, if I had to say anything to her, I'd probably just say, just do it for yourself. Don't do it for anybody else. Only do it for yourself.
Yeah, do it for the love of it and for the love of yourself, because you're absolutely right. Everybody around you loves you no matter what the outcome. But the amount of energy that you would have expended to be thinking about everybody else and not focusing on your race and your 10 seconds or 11 seconds, it could have been the marginal difference of a first or second or third place, couldn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Good advice. So tell us about Hartpury. You went to Hartpury to do your BTEC in sport?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did. Absolutely loved my time at Hartbury. Unfortunately, it did come in COVID, so I probably only got really about 5 to 6 months there out of my 2 years, um, which was a bit of a disappointment because the 5 to 6 months I was there, I really, really loved. I really
Yeah.
enjoyed it. It's again, it's just that step up going from like GCSE PE, and then coming into this college that has all this high-tech equipment and amazing facilities. Um, the lecturers there were just so good. I learned so much, and it was in that course where I realized that I wanted to work in sport, and this is definitely what I wanted to do at university. Um, and it was really beneficial to me as an athlete as well. I was learning so much about performance sport that I could then actually take into my career as an athlete. So it was really, really beneficial. And yeah, gutted that I didn't get a bit more time there,
Yeah.
because I would have loved to have more time. But yeah, it was fantastic.
Because you had a cracking season, didn't you? Under 15 to under 17. And then you would have been at Hobby. So then it would have been COVID. So
Mhm.
you've had to
Exactly that.
you.
Yeah, it was hard. I remember so we had to do a 2 week placement during our time at Hartbury, and I decided to do my placement at my old high school, Denmark Road, in the PE department. And I remember being in the PE department, and I was looking at flights to Italy because that's where the European Junior Championships were, and that was my goal for that season. Um, I think I had the qualifying time for that year, and it was all I could look forward to. And then we got the news that Italy was they were closing the borders to Italy because of COVID. And I remember that specific moment so clearly. Um,
Oh,
I was absolutely heartbroken because I really felt that was going to be a turning point for me. Um, in terms of my athletic career, and I was so looking forward to it. Unfortunately, obviously, that didn't happen, and who knows what would have happened if that went ahead.
yeah.
But yeah, it was a fantastic couple of seasons, and it was a real shame that COVID came when it did. I felt like I was getting to my peak, and yeah, unfortunately, obviously, all the tracks being closed, having to train at home, I lost my spark a little bit. I did lose my love for it during that time, and I think a lot of people did. Found it really hard to motivate during such a difficult time, and then getting back on track after COVID felt especially hard as well.
Yeah, I didn't know that actually. That's just made me go super goosebumpy. I didn't know that. That is just, I mean, I remember when the Olympics were off for the year, and I remember thinking, God, those athletes, they worked for 3, 4 years to get there. So that's not a dissimilar story. You know, you'd worked for 6 or 7 years to get there, and to get that qualifying time is incredible. So that's amazing. So you went then to Bath. So Bath was at the end of COVID. Did you start Bath at the end of COVID then? So did you have the full 3, 4 years there?
Yeah, so I had the full 3 years. My first year was um, primarily virtual,
Okay.
but we did have in-person stuff as well, in-person lectures and in-person labs. So I didn't miss out as much as the year before me. Um, but yeah, it was altered slightly in the first year because of COVID, but I think I still managed to get the full experience.
Mm. So tell us about the course that you did.
Yeah, so I did sport and exercise science. So this is looking at physiology, nutrition, biomechanics, psychology. So pretty much everything to do, and like any and everything that you would find under the sports umbrella, but also looking at exercise and health as well. So not just looking at a sports performance side of things, but general health population as well. So it was incredibly interesting. It was really helpful because I did find what I loved especially from that course. It's very broad. So you study a lot of modules throughout the 3 years, but it gives you so much choice, so many options to choose from. So I found things that I love and things that I really did not love. So I knew exactly what I did and what I really didn't want to do. So it was incredibly helpful in navigating my career path after university. And if anybody listening to this at all is considering Bath, I absolutely could not recommend it enough. I think it's currently second in the UK for sports science, and it is just getting better and better by the year. It's outstanding. The facilities are amazing. The teaching was outstanding, and the support I received during my 3 years as well was really, really good. So can't recommend it enough.
Yeah.
And if I could go back and do it all again, I would.
Okay, that's great. Lovely to hear that for the athletes, because some of them will be considering Bath because it's such a good sports university, but really, really nice feedback. So what were the modules that you loved? What were you really interested in?
So I love physiology and psychology and anything kind of under that barrier as well. So anatomy as well as physiology. We did some really, really interesting stuff in my 3rd year, looking at more clinical physiology, looking at how exercise can be used as a medicine for cancer and for heart disease and stuff. So it was really, really interesting stuff. But yeah, physiology and psychology came out on top for me.
Yeah, yeah. So then, gosh, I've got so many questions, because I know you came out and you then thought maybe sports psychology was what you wanted to do when you finished at Bath. Tell us about the thought or the decision making. That it was difficult, really difficult decision making that you had to do, analysing whether or not to do sports psychology afterwards, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a bee in here.
Don't get stung. If we
Let me just close this.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, after that interruption, so I had a absolutely fantastic lecturer in my 3rd year of uni who took our psychology module, and first lecture of the year, I go in and instantly he just lit a spark for me for psychology. I don't know what it was. I don't know the way he just portrayed it, but I was instantly so interested. And I remember going up to him after the lecture and I just said, listen, I want this to be my job. How do I do it? And he spent 30 minutes with me and he basically just laid out exactly what I'd need to do. And I went straight home and I was like, this is exactly what I want. Googled it, basically set up like a 10-year life plan. I was like, amazing, this is what I'm going to do. And then, yeah, thoroughly enjoyed that module all year. And then when it came to graduation and looking at my next options, I obviously took a bit of a deeper dive into careers in sports psychology, and I was still super motivated to do it, but it kind of came to me that it takes a lot of time, and obviously it as it should, because it's such an in-depth career. You need to be super qualified, and you wouldn't go to a sports psychologist and they just come straight out of uni. You'd expect them to have all the qualifications, so completely understandable. But I think for me it was kind of appearing not particularly financially feasible at the time. Just going on to do a master's degree, you don't get funding or much funding from the government to do a master's degree. Most of it comes out of your own pocket, and it just didn't really seem like I could achieve it at that current moment. And I thought to myself, you know, I do have my whole life ahead of me, and I love psychology. I have such a passion for sports psychology and wanting to help athletes, especially who have been through what I've been through. And if it's still something that I'm super passionate about in, 10, 20 years, and I'm in a more comfortable position, then I can pursue it. But unfortunately, at the time, I just don't think that it was right for me. And all the time and money that you do have to invest into it, and there's very few careers at the end of it. It's a lot of competition just to get a role in sports psychology, which really demotivated me. And I kind of just decided to look for something else, and then if that passion was still there, I'd come back to it. Because it is always an option. Going back to uni is always an option, no matter how old you are, and trying again to do something else. So it's always there in the back of my mind, and maybe in the future.
Yes, I think if it's in the back of your mind, it might be an itch that one day you'll scratch and you'll do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the barriers to entry, I was quite shocked by the fact you had to do your masters, and then you had to, once you'd qualified, you then had to do a certain number of years that were unpaid. And then, like you say, very few jobs, working for the big, sports governing bodies. Maybe there's 300 jobs in that field. Otherwise, you're then an independent sports psychologist working on your own, which is not easy. So it's interesting. If you could do your degree again, would you have done a different degree, or would you have had to have done that degree in the first place?
So it's actually better to do a psychology degree, because if you don't have a psychology degree, you have to do a conversion course. So where I am right now, having sports science, I would then have to do a year's conversion course, which obviously also costs quite a lot of money. So it would have been better to do just a degree in psychology. But I am happy with the choice that I made, because I did have such an umbrella of modules to choose from. Whereas I think if I had whittled myself down to just psychology and then done the 3 years and gone, actually, this isn't for me, that would have been a huge mistake. But yeah, it's absolutely not to say that a career in sports psychology is not possible. And obviously I know I've kind of made quite a negative experience out of it there. But if anyone does want to do sports psychology, if you have that drive, then absolutely it's achievable. I think for me, I was at a point where I really love it. Am I that passionate about it that I can do another 6, 7 years before I can even get started in the job? Probably not.
Yes. So I think the message to athletes listening, if they know before they go to university that that's what they want to have their career in, then they choose the psychology degree. But
Yeah.
at that point, you didn't know, and you needed to do the broad
Yeah.
course to understand what you liked and didn't like.
Absolutely that. And then yeah, like that's why the conversion course is there. I think most people who do sports science then do the conversion course and go on to sports psychology. Like it's there for a reason. So if you get through the 3 years and you think, well, I should have done a degree in psychology, that's there for you.
Yeah. So Ellie, let's switch back to the sport at Bath then. So you went to Bath, you were part of their performance academy. Tell us about your sport, your journey with sport at Bath University.
Yeah, so I started off in the Bucks program, so that their performance academy. And I think I was there for probably the first half of my first year. And I trained with some lovely people. I trained with Aaliyah Sibbons, who is just a fantastic athlete. She is a sensational sprinter. She's done some really, really outstanding things over the last couple of years. So it was an absolute pleasure to even be in the same room as her, to be honest. But to train with her as well was amazing. And she was so sweet and so lovely. It's such a hard time when you start university, and again, you don't really know what you're doing. You don't know where you are, you don't know what friends you're going to make. So it's really scary. And it was just nice to know that there were other people going through that. And again, it's like you're on your own at university, but when you come to the track, you had that team around you, people who were in that same position. So it was really nice. It was really lovely. It was super high performance group. The coach was really good. He knew what he was on about. He picked things out of me that I didn't even know about myself. And somehow, because it was just like a new perspective, he'd found these things, which I thought was amazing. And it gave me experience in an environment that I hadn't had before. We were doing testing that I'd never done before. These facilities, like we had an indoor track, which at Gloucester was absolutely unheard of. It was such a privilege to be able to warm up indoors and not outside freezing cold. It was lovely. But yeah, and it came to around about 6 months, and I was really struggling with a hamstring injury that I had pretty on and off for maybe the last 1 to 2 years before that. So I tore my hamstring when I came back after COVID, I think it was, for the first time. And yeah, it kind of just was on and off for a couple of years. I never really got back to my pre-COVID performance, and then went to train at Bath, and unfortunately just had more and more issues with my hamstring, and then I got into such a negative headspace, I think, with just how hard it was to transition into university life and be independent and be in a high performance sport environment and then be injured.
Yeah.
It all just kind of got a bit too much for me, and I just faced the facts that this wasn't the right time. So I took myself out of the group for just to take care of my mental health. And everyone was super, super supportive. They said, when you're ready to come back, please do. And unfortunately, I never did. But yeah, I think it was the best decision for me at that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, that's incredibly hard. Like you say, any of the athletes listening going off to university, it's a huge change, huge change. Living independently, meeting new people, not knowing where you are, what you're doing, which lectures to go to, which track or which sport team to join. It's just really, really tough. So having an injury at that time was just such bad luck for you and bad timing. So tell us a bit more about that in terms of since fairly recently, you've set up an Instagram account called Inner Drive Sports, a little bit linked to the sports psychology and your experience at Bath. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so I started Inner Drive when I finished university, and this was at a point where I still wasn't sure about my career in sports psychology, but I was just like, I'm just going to give it a shot anyway. And even if I don't become a psychologist, I still want to try and, raise awareness around athlete mental health. I think it's such an important conversation. It's something that's become more relevant in the last couple of years, which is amazing to see, but I think there is still massive steps to be made in terms of athlete mental health and athlete well-being, and not even just the athletes, the coaches as well, and anyone around the professional sport environment. It's definitely needs to be spoken about more, but I wanted to kind of take that step in terms of sharing my journey, and any tips and tricks that I picked up from my years in sport, but also from what I'd learned from my degree. So yeah, started Inner Drive to kind of just share my story and share some tips, and it didn't really take off, which was kind of what I was expecting. It's hard to start a social media account as it is, but I think in something as niche as sports psychology, was kind of from the start thinking, this might not do so well, but I'm doing it anyway. You can only try, can't you, and see what happens. So yeah, so since I have stopped posting on it, I got a full-time role and kind of took a back seat in my life. But it's still something that's incredibly important to me. And whenever I do have a chance to speak about it, like today, I will always take that chance. And I've noticed a lot of other athletes in the last year or so come out and speak about their experiences with mental health as well. Which is so amazing to see, because I think it's such an important topic. Again, like I said, that's just not spoken about enough.
Yes. And mental health issues manifest themselves in so many different ways with different athletes. How did it manifest with you, and how did it affect you?
Yeah, so I think the start of it all was probably, like I said, I've always been a very, very anxious person. And obviously we did a bit of work around the chimp paradox as well during my time at Cass and Friends, and that was extremely helpful. But I think that was probably the only time that I've ever really spoken to someone about anxiety in sport and anxiety outside of sport as well, and it was kind of always put down to just me being like a perfectionist and a bit of a stress head, was probably words that were thrown around quite a lot, and that is very true. That is kind of some of my personality traits that just kind of comes to me. But it got to a point where it wasn't just about the sport, and it wasn't about performance anymore. It was about not even being able to leave my bedroom, or being able to leave the house, or um get on public transport, because everything was just anxiety inducing. And then I think, to be honest, I probably should have taken a year before I went to university to take care of myself and heal that part of me. But unfortunately, I kind of just I didn't want to stop because school at that point was my purpose. I think if you don't have a break, you kind of lose a sense of what you're doing and who you are. And for me, it was, well, my purpose is education. So I'm just going to go straight into this next chapter of my life because that's all I've known since I was what, like 4 or 5 when you start school.
Yeah.
It's all you know is my purpose is to get an education. So um yeah, I think then going to university and getting an injury, being independent, being away from home, having all these new experiences, just yeah, it was an incredibly anxious time for me. And then when I left my sport, it kind of felt like I had no control over anything anymore. It felt like, I was away from home, I didn't have my sport anymore. What's really going on? So I felt a real lack of control, and then I was diagnosed with depression, anxiety in my first year of university. Um, and then kind of from there, it just went downhill. I really, really struggled, and I really struggled to reach out for help as well. Getting diagnosed in the first place was a massive step for me and something that I found incredibly difficult. And then after that, I was offered very little support by the NHS. I had to reach out to my university who offered me therapy, which was incredibly helpful. Um, but yeah, I was offered very, very little support from my doctor. And then kind of as I began to lose control of myself, I developed anorexia, which I think was like I say, that lack of control. A lot of people with eating disorders talk about control and how having um having that over food and over exercise kind of makes you feel like your life is complete. So, I was going through a time where everything in my life was like wrong to me. I wasn't an athlete anymore, and I wasn't living at home with my parents, and I didn't have really many friends apart from the people that I lived with at university. So I think kind of grasping onto restricting my food intake and over exercising felt like control to me, and it felt like I was doing something right. Um, so yeah, that's kind of how it manifested for me um, over the 3 years at university. But I think that was probably, as weird as it sounds, a long time coming. I think I had a lot of unresolved things that I probably needed to sit down and work through, but I just pushed myself to the point of, it's almost like pushing yourself to burnout, and then everything just comes to the surface. And I think that's what happened with me.
It was almost like you're holding in all these emotions and all of this pressure, and at some point it had to leak out somewhere, didn't it?
Exactly that, yeah.
Who gave you the most help and support, would you say, or which groups helped you most?
So I was given a therapist by my university. Like their support was amazing, absolutely amazing. Um yeah, so they gave me therapy for free, which was, I had therapy for 2 years of my university um experience, and that was the most beneficial thing for me. I did individual therapy and group therapy, um, and then just having the support of people around me as well. Everyone was really supportive with me. They were really, really patient with me. And my parents were obviously there for me as well, which is really difficult for them when your child is going through something like that, and I'm not super far away. I'm only about an hour away, but they're still not with you at home, and you don't know what's going on in day to day. So I can't even begin to imagine how difficult it was for them, but they supported me the whole time, and kind of offered to give me whatever they could to help me out. Like if I needed to move back home, I wouldn't be a disappointment for dropping out of uni, or if I needed therapy, they were there to help provide that as well. And yeah, I was extremely lucky to have such an amazing support system around me, because I really did. And I don't think I would have gotten through it without having everyone around me.
Yeah. So what do you think you can say? What do you think you could say to other parents possibly supporting an athlete child through this sort of same situation? What advice could you give them? Because I suppose as a parent, they don't really know necessarily how to handle this or what to say. But perhaps you can give some parents some advice as to what might be useful things to do or how to support.
Mhm. Yeah, I think to be honest, the most important thing is listening and truly listening. Like there is a huge difference between listening and just waiting to speak.
Yeah.
And I think that is such a massive thing I've encountered. I think, to be honest, especially with my GP, is when I went in there and I got my diagnosis, it just felt like he was just waiting to speak rather than actually listening to what I had to say. And it was the same thing when I went back um, to be diagnosed with anorexia. It was the same thing. It just felt like he was sat there, not really listening to what was coming out of my mouth, but just plotting in his head what he was going to say next. And I think that is the biggest thing for parents is actively listening and taking on what they have to say. There's so much information on the internet about what you should do, but the problem is it varies from person to person. Like I know that certain things that maybe are written online that are helpful for people with eating disorders wouldn't be helpful for me, but then certain things that are like, oh, never do this would be really helpful for me. So
Yeah.
it's so hard to judge, and you have to ask those questions. I think my parents were so extremely supportive of me, but they never really ask me, what do you need? And be
Yeah.
completely honest. Because, when you're in such a vulnerable mental space, you just
Yes.
lie because you don't want to get better. So you just lie. And you just say things that you don't really need, but it'll just get them off your back so that you can kind of get on with it.
Yeah.
And I think the most important thing is really asking those hard questions, stuff that you don't want to ask and then listen. Um, and just have those vulnerable conversations if you can, because I think if like my parents and my friends wouldn't have actually sat me down and had really uncomfortable conversations with me, I probably wouldn't have gotten any better. And it's horrible to have in the time really uncomfortable situations, but you just have to do it, and it makes all the difference. But yeah, actively listening is the best thing.
Yeah, that's brilliant advice. Brilliant advice. And any particular like online stuff that is really helpful, or again, is it just too specific to the individual to be able to sort of answer that question?
No, I think there is a lot out there. There are some really, really good Instagram accounts. I don't know them off the top of my head, but there are some really helpful Instagram accounts that just kind of compress all this information into like a small post so you can easily consume it. Like, you Google how to help someone with an eating disorder and you just get overwhelmed with information. So there are some really helpful social media accounts. Um, and charities like Beat, they offer some really helpful advice as well. Um, but yeah, it's really hard. I think it is about having those conversations and then saying, well, what do you need from me? Is it like you want me to completely leave you alone and you handle this with a therapist and whoever, or do you want me to be as involved in this process as possible? Um, because I think from when you're dealing with an eating disorder, again, I can only speak for myself. I don't know if this applies to other people, but um, sometimes you need another person to intervene. You will be resisting it as much as physically possible and go, I can heal myself on my own. But I couldn't. I needed another person or a group of people or whoever it was. I needed them to intervene and actively stop me from engaging in behaviors and unhelpful thoughts and unhelpful sayings as well. It's just little things you don't realize you do. And things that I still do now that I wouldn't consider unhealthy, but other people pick up on and go, hold on, if you keep repeating that to yourself, it's going to become an unhealthy thought pattern. So just catching bad things. And if you have someone around you to go, actually, maybe you shouldn't think like that because that's really unhelpful, was super helpful to me. But again, I think it is dependent on the person. So yeah, I think it's just again about speaking to them and hearing what they have to say, and going from there.
Yeah, no, very, very helpful. Thank you, Ellie, for sharing all that. That's really, really kind of you. So now tell us what you're doing then. So you've recently started a new job. It's not sports psychology, possibly yet, but tell us about what you're currently doing.
So currently I am an exercise physiologist for a company called CP&R. So they are a cardiac rehabilitation company. They also work, doesn't have to be cardiac related diseases. We also have athletes who have gone through cancer treatment, who have things like POTS, who maybe just might be looking to do preventative care. So people who are completely healthy and want to keep it that way. So they've joined us to kind of gain our perspective and our advice. So what I do on a day-to-day basis is lead athletes through resistance sessions, and then they're also given like homework to do cardiovascular sessions. They have a food diary, which is our responsibility to keep on top of, marking, feedback, make sure that their nutritional habits are in check. And also just making sure that their lifestyle habits are in check as well. So like steps, psychological management as well, whether they need any extra support, managing injuries if they have injuries. So it's really good. Like if you're still not really sure what you want to do, I think this job kind of gives a bit of everything. I'm doing sports coaching, physiology, a bit of psychology, nutrition. So there is a bit of everything. So as like I said, when I came out of uni and I wasn't really 100% sure what I wanted to do, this does kind of cover everything. So yeah, really helpful in helping me again figure out what I do and don't like.
Good. And you're still living in Bath, which is nice.
Yes, yeah, I am. I left temporarily, like I said, once I graduated university, but just couldn't stay away. I love it too much here. I had to come back. So yeah, I don't know if I'll ever leave, to be honest. It's so beautiful here. I can't really see myself anywhere else.
No, it's stunning. It's really, really stunning. Beautiful, beautiful city. Well, Ellie, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. It's been an absolute pleasure and a privilege to see you and speak to you again.
Thank you so much. It's absolutely lovely to catch up. And hopefully, if someone is listening this far, then they've taken some advice from this, and maybe I can help someone along the way to share their story about their mental health, which is the goal.
That is the goal, isn't it? It's all about opening up, talking about it, and really making people a little bit more aware of how other people can help one another.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, well, great to see you, Ellie. Thank you very much.
And you, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Athletic Ambitions. We hope you found this episode of interest, and if so, be sure to send this to your family and friends who might also benefit. If you're interested in donating to Cass and Friends, the links are in the description, and we'll hope to see you in the next episode. Thanks, Tom and Fee.